by becoming rich.
Take all your money, buy Bitcoin.
You can wake up every morning and say GM.
GM. Today is Tuesday, 15th of October. So, daily levels. Let's go. Bitcoin has followed the path I've talked about over the past week or so, where we took out the lows, 200-day EMA, sweep 60k, and reverse. So from that perspective, looks good. And what's going to happen next depends. Is this the start of a further move? Is this the start of a bigger move higher? Excuse me. Is it the start of a bigger move? Or have we left behind untested areas, and has there been enough FOMO or too much FOMO in the move up here? You can look at one example of that, which is the move we've had with open interest build up. So BTC price from the lows is up about 13%, and from the lows of open interest, which was after the little squeeze, positions rebuilding about 14%. So roughly keeping pace with price. Wouldn't class that as being overextended, but there definitely is perp chasing. And since we are up into resistance and potentially rejecting it, it leaves a very clear path. So altcoins at the same time up 23%. We see this over and over again. Altcoins continue to outpace BTC. Altcoins are the big risk factor here, really, because when you consider this, altcoin open interest is now back at October highs, September highs, I should say. September, end of September, start of October. It's basically right back to where that was. And if you look at total 3 in comparison, total 3 here is not at that level. Right? This is the 28th, 29th. That was the high. That was when this open interest peaked. Open interest is already all the way back up, while price is not. So you're seeing this open interest divergence yet again. We saw it before. If this comes off, I can see it. There we go. I have to go to a 4-hour. See it more clearly. The suspense is killing me. Come on. All right. And so we had also seen this when we saw this move here, and we saw a move into June highs and then a rally into July highs. You had June highs and you had the July, where was it? July move was over here. Sorry, there's June and there's July. Significant open interest wipe on this move down. Rally into a lower high with a lower level of interest. So you can have divergences both directions with open interest. We then had a sell-off to new lows. We then had a sell-off to new lows. We had a bounce up and a bounce up. Open interest pretty much following, tracking with price. And then we saw on this move, open interest outpacing as OI went above. So I'll mark a couple of these up so you can see it. Maybe makes it a bit clearer. We had the August highs for altcoin open interest. And then we saw, I think it was by the time we got here, right? We had the August level here. And by the time we got to the 20th of September, altcoin open interest was already over and above. So by the 20th of September, which is here, we had this big divergence where price was lower, open interest was significantly higher. Alts did keep pushing to grab this liquidity, but it was a push into a lower high beyond the July highs, and it was a failed breakout attempt. So you saw massive overextension of open interest, which started building at the 20th. The rally tried to continue, but there was simply too much short-term positioning chasing it, and price pulled back. We got that flush at the start of the month, the October early month flush. And again, same thing, but now we're seeing open interest, a bit like we did over there. Open interest, while price is nowhere near the highs, open interest is almost at the highs, if not going higher. So what does that mean? Positions, perpetual futures positions, are building on alts at a greater pace than they are on BTC. That's really what this chart's telling you. So BTC itself is also making a new high in OI, but Bitcoin's open interest has been much steadier along the way. It really hasn't moved much since the peak around the Trump rally. Bitcoin OI went much higher at the Trump rally because it was all about Trump, assassination attempt, right up until he spoke at the conference, the Bitcoin conference. Alts were relatively quiet at that point. Since then, on each push, alts have been performing more. You've saw meme coins come back. You've saw Sui going up. You've saw, just in general, altcoins are performing, which I would say leans towards a higher potential for a pullback. And so if I was looking at this, I'd be watching below and seeing, okay, what inefficiencies have been left behind. So we have the squiggle path. My expectation for that is actually that we have a close above. So yesterday we wicked out those levels. We took the highs late yesterday. And then price reversed. And I think that probably we go again above it and actually close. And that is going to be what is more likely to actually generate a false breakout, in my opinion. And then we go down. And if we go down to the lows. We form a proper bottom. And then it starts to rally from there. And that's where the move begins. And then the bull market proper kicks off November, December for BTC. It would be a case of one more flush and either taking out the lows, double bottom, whatever. I think that if it's not able to break and hold above 70 or around 70, I think this entire area is prone for a false breakout with a buildup of open interest on both BTC and on alts, and that you'll probably see pullbacks. And how that would look on total 3 would be something like the red path. The red path or the blue path, not sure. The blue path is obviously the bullish one. There is a good chance that altcoins here, if you're looking at total 3 as the guide for them, there's a good chance that they are finishing the downtrend, starting to flip the bands and trying to get them back to bullish, and that the bottom's in and it just sort of grinds higher from here. If it does, and you see the make a new high and make a second high, so if we hit 660 and then we hit anything above 670 or 80, I think that's it then. Then you move into one of these more steady trends up for alts. However, I think that the red path is very likely. Whether it leads to whatever the black path is, don't know. Doesn't really concern me. But question is it time? Is it time for altcoins as a whole broadly to rally? Open interest would tell you that people think so. They're starting to position for it. Funding rates have been rising as well. And open interest is outpacing price on this move. So I would lean towards a higher probability of some kind of correction. I think that on the low time frames we go for another push. I do think we take out these highs. I do think that this is almost too obvious of a top. It could just be the top. Definitely could. But my expectation, I think, for today or tomorrow is that we push beyond it to really have maximum long chasing and FOMO. Because if you're a bear, and none of this for me is bearish, even if Bitcoin does all of this, this is still just part of a reaccumulation process for me that ends up going higher. I don't think anything in this area is screaming bearish. I think it's Bitcoin in consolidation. But this is a very standard move up. You have a strong move off the lows. There has been no retest. You have a short consolidation, another impulse, moves higher and higher and higher. So it's a very leverage-driven, FOMO-driven chasing move. It might be Sailor buying as well. I mentioned yesterday, Sailor has another $500-600 million left to buy from his latest issuing of debt, essentially convertible notes for MicroStrategy, which they use to buy BTC. This type of move is very much a Sailor move where the market just front runs him and forces higher and higher and higher as they're trying to buy. And then whenever they're finished buying, it unwinds. Doesn't mean it's bearish. It just means it's an inefficient move. And we've seen this so many times that I think probably bears are thinking, oh, this is it, right? So we've hit this level. We've hit that level there. We've had a false breakout. And so load up the shorts. It's going back down. And that's why I would suspect that it hangs around and blasts through that first. Because that's then when people say, oh, look, it wasn't a false breakout, it was real. And the bears get taken out and stopped out. I don't think 68K is any confirmation of bullishness. I think that it has to be 70. If you see something more like the blue path, where price breaks out towards 70, and a few days go past, and it's still trading up here, then I think you have a stronger move, continues towards the all-time high, which probably then has a pullback around that point, sets a higher low, and then we kick on from there. So at a bit of a turning point here, I think today will tell. I think today is going to be a very clear guide for what's going to happen next based on where BTC goes. My expectation is this black path. I think that as long as it's holding these 1 hour bands, you've had the false breakout and the attempted sell-off, and it has a little structure break. And so it's a setup technically that would entice many people to short. And quite often you see it just sort of hanging around before that pop. And then if it doesn't see follow through and you come back below that level and back below 67 and down towards 66, that then is where I think it unwinds faster. And you see this sort of, we've had 1, 2, and then 3 pushes up. Probably something similar. You push down, you push down, you push down, and then it goes into a bottoming phase and starts to rally proper. So that's what I'm looking at for BTC. Across the market, you've seen ETH have a bit of a period of outperformance there, obviously after being brutally dog shit, but it had a big move yesterday and certainly is not ready to have any major move yet, I don't think. It has avoided downside. There is plenty of room for it to push. Even just any type of squeeze, if BTC has that next push to 68, don't be surprised to see ETH have a move to like 3K, like a massive move, because this entire area is going to have such a build-up of short positioning that it could get blown out and then come back down. So if you see Bitcoin today or tomorrow, whatever, following that black path, if you see Bitcoin making a push to 68, watch Ethereum. You might see a much bigger move. That to me would be a sign that it's not starting a new move. It's probably a sign that it actually is going to come back down and then go again later on. I don't think this type of structure is setting up necessarily for Ethereum to, I see some comparisons to this kind of stuff here because it does look similar, right? It comes down into a low, tests again, rallies up, comes back, looks bearish, right? Looks bad, and then boom, away it goes, never comes back. I don't think we're there for ETH. I think that ETH is just actually genuinely not strong and will continue to underperform and has the bands fully bearish on the daily, and they don't tend to flip back to bullish in just one go. If it did, you'd have to see a strong move above that chops back into the bands but doesn't lose them, builds, and then the bands eventually cross and it can move towards its 2024 highs. Not impossible, could surely happen. It would require Bitcoin to break out and not pull back, and I don't think Bitcoin is there yet. I don't think it's ready for that. Could be wrong. I think if Bitcoin is going to do that, it's going to be the blue path. So I don't know which chart was I on. Yeah, blue path will be like your bullish continuation. That will be bullish continuation for the next probably week or two towards the election, but then there would be a pullback. I don't think this move is going to break all-time high and keep going. Very well could. 70k is your level for that, and there may not be any pullbacks before the election, or there may not be any more pullbacks at all from here on BTC. It's certainly possible that all of this brutal chop we've been through is more than enough, and it's just time for BTC to go. Definitely could be. If that happens, it would be probably a month earlier than I'm expecting, but fully prepared for it, because market does not do what you think it's going to do. You have to have different paths, different ideas in your head about where it's going to go and what it's going to do. But for today, I think this false breakout, it could just be false breakout. I think it might be slightly too obvious, and that we push again one more beyond. Similar happened over here, false breakout, a couple of days later it then swept them. Whether it's that or whether it's a breakout that holds and then reverses, I think BTC is not done yet with the upside in the short term. And I also think it's not done yet with the downside in the medium term. And then I think that 1 to 2 months from now, we're seeing significantly higher and starting to grind into a multi-month rally to 75, 80, 85, and those areas as we go towards the end of the year into next year. What other factors are there? There's no economic data this week that really matters. There's some retail sales data. It's not really gonna mean much. Stocks chilling at all-time highs. Nasdaq below all-time high. The dollar has completed this rally into, if this is a bearish retest, the dollar has pretty much completed it. And so it probably chops around here for a bit and then goes lower if it's going to reject off those bands. And gold, not much to talk about. Bond yields after the little pop last week, quieting off. VIX dropping down. Oil took a big dive yesterday, so that's depends how quickly it drops. You know, this is good in the sense that oil rallying is often tied to heightened fears of war escalations in the Middle East. So oil rallying is a sign of potential uncertainty and instability, and it's also a recession signal, or so not a recession signal, an inflation signal, right? Because if oil rises and continues rising, that is inflationary. But at the same time, if oil drops too fast, that's a deflationary signal. And deflation is like the worst thing for markets. So you look at something like oil, what you really want to see is no volatility. You want to see it pretty quiet. You don't want to see massive moves up or massive moves down, because that indicates some kind of, you know, uncertainty or risk, either a risk of inflation or a risk of deflation. It seems like because it's gone up and down so fast, I don't think it's an inflation deflation thing. I think it's more a war or no war escalation thing. And so if that gets avoided, then probably you'll see things go higher in terms of risk assets, stocks, crypto, all that kind of stuff, as long as oil doesn't start mooning above 80. And gold, Bitcoin. So these are two of the charts. Gold, Bitcoin, Nasdaq, Bitcoin. You want to see those breaking down. That's a sign for Bitcoin going into a period of sustained outperformance, which I think it will be doing. And what about the USD? We've seen this old chart I talked about a bunch. I think it's on this one. Dollar and Chinese yuan. There we go. So in every major bull we've had, the green boxes, you've seen a sustained downtrend from the dollar against the Chinese yuan. And we started to see that over the past few weeks when we had our little rally. And then it's reversing because the dollar is obviously rallying. So if you're a bull, you probably want to see that make new lows. And if it does, making new lows from here pretty much confirms that this is going to go into a more extended downtrend. Right now, it seems like just a counter trend bounce. It's broken structure. It seems like it's starting a downtrend, but you would need to see it break those lows. That would be a clear sign that we have months probably ahead of further dollar weakness, which is typically good for assets like Bitcoin. And that is it. GMGM. Today, stream at 4 p.m. UTC, the regular time. Ask Michael live. See you then. GMGM.